उपदिश्य मम वाचमिमां प्रसुप्तां सञ्जीवयत्यखिलशक्तिधरस्वधाम्ना अन्यांश्च हस्तचरणश्रवणत्वगादीन् प्राणान्नमो भगवते पुरुषाय तुभ्यं प्राणान्नमो भगवते पुरुषाय तुभ्यम्.
There cannot be any creation which is not made of all the three gunas. So sattva, rajas, tamas will be there in everything. Scientifically also I can explain it in another manner. But he will not have the bondage created by any of the gunas. He will neither be bound by the tamasika bondage, nor by the rajasika bondage, nor even by the sattvika bondage. He is called a gunatita. Now, this step-by-step method is very clearly explained in 14th chapter itself, and then further elaborated in 16th, 17th and 18th chapter. So, we must understand that Bhagavad Gita is not a philosophy. It is an application-oriented science, and in no other scripture we have the personality has been analyzed in so much of detail, with so many models, with so much of clarity and precision. So, when we study, we have to make it applicable. We have to understand that how we can apply it. And I will try to help in that process also, in that manner also. In the 17th chapter that is preceding this, 17th chapter is called Shraddhatraya Vibhaga Yoga. Shraddhatraya Vibhaga Yoga. Why Shraddhatraya Vibhaga Yoga? Yesterday or the other day I had told you that Shraddha, this doesn't have any English equivalent, but it means whatever we value most. It is actually our value system. Suppose we value money, we give supreme position to money, then naturally our attention will be on money, our respect will be for money, our respect will be for moneyed people. Is it not so? Suppose we give maximum value to fame in life, then our attention will be for fame, our honor will be only for famous people. Is it not? Whatever we give the maximum value, we will have. Suppose somebody gives maximum value to his physique, the bodily health and strength. So he will throughout the day, he will do dumbbell, this, that and all, and he will go for all kinds of gym and all. His attention will be only on that. So, in 17th chapter, I think it is the 3rd verse, he says that Shraddha mayoyam purushaha yo yat shraddha saeva saha. Trividha bhavati shraddha na sattvanurupa sarvasya shraddha bhavati bharata. Shraddha mayoyam purusha yo yat shraddha saeva saha. He says that a person is actually an embodiment of his shraddha. Outside he may look different. All the people are looking different. But he says that that is only a look. The real person you can know from his shraddha. Because his whole mind, his attention, his value, everything is depending on his shraddha. So shraddha is given the maximum supreme importance. That whatever our shraddha is, we become that. So when our shraddha is for this truth or the ultimate fulfillment in life or discovering the ultimate truth, then what will happen? Our life will be completely veering around that. We will be enfolded with all related to the truth, shastras. When our shraddha is for the scripture, we will become an embodiment of scripture. So shraddha is given lot of importance, and in the 17th chapter, he has divided this Shraddha also of three kinds. That is why Shraddha Traya Vibhaga Yoga. The three kinds of Shraddha. Sattviki Shraddha, Rajasiki Shraddha and Tamasiki Shraddha. Now naturally you have to really to pursue this goal. First of all, you have to generate the Shraddha for this. That is, you have to value this goal, and more you introspect and think about it, evaluate it. Finally, it has to be given the supreme value in life compared to all other things. Money, property, wealth, fame, relation, prestige, everything. In comparison to everything, this has to be given the supreme value. Then only we will be able to progress smoothly. Or as we progress, the value system also will change. The Shraddha will grow more and more for this ultimate goal. Saying that, he is coming to this Moksha Sannyasa Yoga or Moksha Yoga. That is the 18th chapter. This Moksha Yoga, the word moksha, we have funny ideas about it, that I don't want to get born, so the next life I will not be born again and all that. That is only a religious idea given for primary level. When we take to spirituality, the moksha means wherever our mind is feeling bound. Why are we not cheerful? Why are we not happy? That means there is some constriction somewhere. We are not whatever we want to be. So, when all those bondages are relieved, we become absolutely, we feel the freedom within, we become fulfilled. Then that is called the moksha. So, moksha will come wherever the bondage is. Suppose I suffer from ignorance, that I don't know what is the truth, or I have to know what is the Atma, or what is the truth, I don't know. It is a bondage of the intelligence, is it not so? Where will you know? The knowledge dawns in the intelligence. So the ignorance is the bondage of the intelligence. So the knowledge must free the intelligence by removing the ajnana. Removing the jnana must remove the ajnana. The knowledge must remove the ignorance, so that the intelligence becomes free and happy, that it doesn't have any more enquiry, that it doesn't want to know anything more, it is happy with it. Similarly, the emotionally, we always feel stressed, we feel small, we feel fearful, we feel anxious, we feel deprived, we are not happy. These are all emotional bondage we are suffering from, emotional constrictions we are suffering from. So when our feeling will be, I am universal, there is no second, nothing, we will find that there is nothing for me to gain anywhere. So that will be relieving our emotional part of the being completely. That you don't want any happiness from anywhere at all. You are fulfilled. So that is the moksha for the emotional part of our being. Similarly, I suffer from ego, that I have done something sinful and I am suffering. Or I have done something great, for that I feel aggrandized, or we feel egoistic about it. These are also creating stress in our mind. Whether you feel sinful or you feel great about yourself, both are creating stress in your mind. You think, you introspect, you will find, even if you think that I have done something great, it is actually constricting your mind, it is creating a stress. If you think that I have done something wrong, that is also creating a stress. So it is the stress created by doership. The emotional part was enjoyership, and here it is the stress created by doership, that I have done this, I have done that, or I have to do this, I have to do that. I have 2 children, unless they are settled, I will not be able to die happily. These are all doership, ego. So, whatever will release you from this egoistic position, the doership, will be the moksha for your ego. When we come to know that guna guneshu vattanta iti matvana sajjate, that the whole world is a play of the three gunas. It is playing, the phenomena are going on. There is no desire anywhere at all. The planets are running around the stars are moving, the galaxies are moving, some galaxies are getting born, some are getting destroyed. On the earth, rivers are flowing, the plants are growing, the flowers are blossoming. Is there any desire anywhere? Just naturally, swabhava, it is happening. Like that, my body-mind personality also being a part of nature. It is functioning, whatever qualities it has and whatever surrounding situation makes it do. According to that, it goes on functioning. So there is no particular ego in that. That ego is a posited delusion. The whole world is phenomenological, in which my personality is also playing its role. So the doership gets completely dissolved by this knowledge of reality. So this knowledge, when it is actualized, it relieves our intelligence from its ignorance, emotion from its smallness, constrictions, and our ego from its doership. All the three. In Mundakopanishad, the shloka says, Bhidyate hridaya granthihi chidyante sarva samshayaha kshiyante chasya karmani tasmin drishte paravare. Tasmin drishte paravare. By seeing the truth in para as well as avara, that is in the great as well as in the small. That means there is nothing other than the truth at all. One who finds, that is, the truth is not only in meditation. Oh, in samadhi I have known the Brahman or known the Atma, and now again when I am in it, I don't know it. It's not like that. Tasmin drishte paravare, that you cannot miss him anywhere. You cannot miss the truth anywhere. Everywhere, every time, always. All other things can be missed, but the truth cannot be missed, because it is the revealer of the world. Even if there is no signal, it is unconsciousness. That unconsciousness, no signal state is revealed by this consciousness only. Otherwise, you would not have known that I have not known anything. So everything is revealed by it. You cannot miss it at all. When we come to know this truth in everywhere, everything, then what happens? Three are the consequences. Bhidyate hridaya granthihi. This is the emotional knots in our heart. As just now I said, the smallness of our heart. This hridaya granthihi. Granthihi means knot. That is, hridaya we say about our heart. That means the emotional part of our being. We say hridaya. Hridaya granthi means the knot in our heart, in our emotional part of the being. That gets untied. That means you feel fulfilled. You don't look for anything more. Chidyante sarva samshayaha. That all the doubts of the intelligence get completely vanished, completely dissolved. Chidyante, that means untied. Everything is removed. Sarva samshayaha. Kshiyante chasya karmani. He doesn't have anything more to do. He doesn't feel that I have done something great or wrong, or I have to do something. I have not been able to do this or do that, because the doership itself has gone. His body-mind personality goes on functioning whatever is needed from time to time. Maybe he is much more active than others, but he doesn't feel that I am doing anything. Whatever the body-mind personality does, it goes on doing throughout. Tasmin drishte paravare. This is the result. This is the threefold result. That is called moksha. So moksha is not getting born in another womb or not having another life or anything like that. That is a religious concept based on the model of Punarjanma. These are all religious concepts. But spiritual concept of moksha, when we start moving on the spiritual pilgrimage, then all these concepts will undergo change. See, when we proceed in spiritual knowledge, many of our standard ideas we have, common ideas, they have to be completely reformed, refreshed, and understood with a new dimension. Moksha, people often talk about not being born again. This is a religious concept, I said yesterday. Religious concept means our religion is based on the 4 pillars. Religious concepts are based, the religion is based on 4 concepts which we can call 4 pillars. One is the God, the concept of God, heaven, hell, etc. The second is the karma theory, which when we really go into it, it is nothing different from causality. Causality, you understand that everything in this created universe is under causality. That means you can relate by cause and effect chain. Nothing exists here without a cause. Except when we go to the ultimate level, there cannot be any cause by definition also. We will discuss it, we have earlier also discussed it. Then Punarjanma. To complete this causality and explain whatever happening in life, there is a concept of Punarjanma, means as if there is a soul different from the Atma we are speaking about. There is a soul which undergoes repeated birth and death, and through that it progresses. Finally it attains moksha when it never gets born again. Now the first thing you should remember, because people find it very difficult to get over, to outlive these concepts. So spirituality cannot progress if our mind refuses to outlive these concepts. These concepts are good. These religious concepts are necessary for the large mass of people. It is essential. Otherwise, to keep the society bridled, to keep it on the path of morality also, they are necessary. But for a truth seeker, when we take to the spiritual path, unless we are able to outlive it, we will not be able to progress. All the Shastras are speaking about it. Still, because we are away from the Shastras, we get bogged down to these concepts. It's a half-digested form of heredity we are receiving. Earlier days, people were given the exposure to the Shastras. So although religious concepts were there, they used to know when one has to outlive. It is clearly mentioned in the Upanishads, in Mundaka Upanishad, in Katha Upanishad, everywhere. But still our people find it difficult. Even when we explain, they find it difficult to accept because it has got so ingrained. The first thing is Atma. Atma is all pervading one transcendental consciousness. Even calling it all pervading is wrong. Because when all is there, something can pervade. It means that something is already existing and all are pervading. Actually, this all, the entire universe is appearing in that consciousness. It is just like writing in the consciousness. As I yesterday said, that writing in air, writing in water, it is written, the whole universe is written in consciousness. You can easily know it also, but you will refuse to accept it. Because in the dream, what is happening? Is not the dream world fully written in consciousness? There is no causality, nothing. Suddenly a strange space ship appears in your dream. Was it necessary to make the steel for it and prepare and the scientific research to create that? Maybe that has not been created in the world at all, but it still appears in the dream. When your mother's figure is appearing in the dream, Immediately mother's thought, mother's figure, everything is together. Can you say that I first thought about mother, then the figure of the mother appeared? Are they not simultaneous? Because there is no causality necessary. When things are produced in the consciousness, it is just appearing to be. That is why ultimate level, the creation of the universe, no causality is there. It cannot be, because cause and effect chain, you cannot go to any absolute level. You will ask then where from that has come. You understand? I can go into detail, but I have spoken about it quite a few times. I will come again sometimes. It is simply like this, that when you inquire into A, you find B as the cause. Where from did B come? You find out C as the cause. Where from did C come? You find D as the cause. Like that it goes on. And finally you find Z as the cause. Naturally the question will be then, where from did Z come? We are assuming God has created the universe. Normally the question will be, where from God has come? If God is also an entity, a person or a personality who has created the universe, where from God has come? If you extend the causality. So, causality cannot take us to the ultimate level. So, the ultimate truth is transcending causality. This duality, time, space, causality, these are all limited concepts. For the absolute truth, we have to outlive all that. Now, Atma in spirituality is a concept which has been given by the Upanishads. Brahman is a concept of the Upanishad. It is called Upanishad Brahman also. So we have to understand what Upanishads speak about Atma or Brahman. Our Atma, the consciousness, the whole universe is appearing in that consciousness. It is not an object. Not only that, if it is an object, then you will ask, where from did consciousness come? As the scientist will say, that the consciousness is a product of the body. Is it not the present conclusion? That the body generates the consciousness. What they speak about consciousness is only the awareness we speak of, limited to the body. When we are speaking about the Atma, that consciousness, it is not the body produces the consciousness. All the bodies and all the objects of the universe appears in that consciousness. And this consciousness is not an object which you can see in front, that, oh, I have known, this is consciousness. Then it is again an object of the universe. Then where from did that consciousness come will be the question. Actually the consciousness can only be known as our subject I. It cannot be known as anything. I have known the consciousness. The consciousness knows everything, reveals everything. Whatever is known, if you say that, oh, today I discovered this is the consciousness. No, then what you have discovered is again an object before you. Object means may not be inert object, subtle object. But that which revealed, that I have known, I am saying, that I is the consciousness. So, the concept of Atma as leaving a body and going to another body, taking another body, passing through that, it is an objective Atma we are speaking, which is moving, which is fragmented, which is changeful, undergoing change, moving from body to body, moving in space-time. If any such Atma is there, it is for science to discover one day that there is a subtle element which as a whole goes out and gets into another body or creates another body and goes like that. It is for science. It's not for spirituality. Spirituality does not deal with any Atma which is object or fragmented or which changes, which moves. The consciousness does not move at all. Any movement can be only in the objective plane, in the objective realm. The subject which reveals all the movement, that is the Atma. So unless we are ready to outlive our usual formed concepts, we will not progress in spirituality. How can you outlive? You have to think more about it. Whatever concepts you have gathered, whatever baggage we have created by not thinking, not going into the Shastras, they have to be re-evaluated and then get over it. Everybody will have some opposition in the beginning that, oh no, what Swamiji says I cannot accept. You read the Upanishads, you read everywhere and think. think about it, it will become clear that it can only be that. Now, like that, the moksha concept that I will not be born again in the womb is a religious concept. In spirituality, moksha means, yesterday I discussed from Mundaka Upanishad, Vidyate Hridayak. This verse is very important, you can write down also. Towards the end it comes. Vidyate Hridayak Granthihi Chidyante Sarva Samshayaha Shiyante Chasya Karmani Tasmin Drishte Paravare. See this Tasmin Drishte Paravare. Drishte means dekhna, to see. Now, seeing is not seeing with the eyes. If it had been an object, you will see with the eyes. Can you see the consciousness that I with the eyes or anything, any indriyas? I cannot be, even it cannot be known as different from the eye. It has to be known as it is, as is. So, tasmin drishte, it's a figurative expression. That is when we know. Actually, the word used in our Shastras is ikshana, not darshana. Ikshana means the darshana of the buddhi. That is what happens when we study the Shastras or think about the truth, meditate on the truth, analyze the truth, do vichara on the truth. What happens? The buddhi undergoes a transformation. Normally the buddhi is given to only understanding gross objects, gross situations, fragmented things, objective things. It cannot understand the subtle things, unified unity and the ultimate abstractions. Even supposed to understand scientific truth also, how much the buddhi has to undergo culture. I remember while we were studying MSc, everybody will skip statistical mechanics, because you could answer the paper without answering statistical mechanics also. In physics, I am talking about pure physics. So, because the statistical mechanics needed quite a lot of abstraction, which normally the buddhi will not be ready to do. So even good students who had stood first during our MSc exam also, they skipped statistical mechanics. You understand how much it is difficult to any abstract, say quantum physics. Quantum physics is not so, but quantum electrodynamics or quantum mechanics, when you go to that, to understand it fully is extremely difficult, because the buddhi has to be cultured and taken to that subtle level. During Einstein's time, who made the statement, I don't remember, maybe Eddington or so, that he said that in the whole world only 3 people understands theory of relativity. One is Einstein himself, one is he himself, the person who made the statement, and he mentioned about another. Why? Because even the scientists, Nobel laureates also were finding it very difficult because of the abstraction. We are behaving in a 3-dimensional world of 3 space coordinates. That is our world. A 4-dimensional world where time is the 4th coordinate, they were not able to conceive of. So even in objective science also, to conceive the truth, the buddhi has to undergo great culture. So what to speak of this transcendental science of understanding our own subject, which the science has prevented right in the beginning. They say if we go into the subject, then everything will become unexplained. So we will not question anything, we will not inquire into the subject. Our whole inquiry will be restricted to the objective world which the subject finds, subject sees, subject knows. This is the fundamental postulate of physics or postulate of objective science. They don't consider the subject.